I've been a specialist in primary education, notably literacy, for the last 30 years, but more recently I've become interested in the effects of modern life on child development and written several books on the subject. One of them, 21st Century Boys, was inspired by the endless reports about boys' declining levels of attainment and by a throwaway remark by an educational psychologist I met on the research trail. "Boys," she said, "we're pushing them towards either ADHD or Asperger's syndrome, depending on their particular genetic predisposition." Certainly, boys seem far more likely than girls to suffer from these and other developmental conditions, and statistics suggest they're also more likely to have emotional or mental health problems during the teenage years. The reason behind these boy problems are complex, but on the basis of what I've learned over the last decade or so, here are 7 tips about bringing up boys in the modern world. First of all, for a mixture of genetic and cultural reasons, boys seem on the whole to need a lot more mothering in the early months and years. They're generally developmentally behind girls from birth, so can be more emotionally needy and less socially aware. So from the moment they're born, they need lots of cuddles, eye contact, baby talk, songs, and stories. It doesn't have to be mum who provides it, but it does have to be consistent, one-on-one, loving care. And in 21st century Britain, that's not so easy to provide. But if a boy does have a predisposition to a developmental disorder, the quality of care in the first 1,000 or so days of his life will affect the extent to which that predisposition kicks in. And since boys are generally slower to develop language skills than girls, they need lots of interaction and communication from day one. One problem for modern parents that didn't apply in the past is that boys seem to be drawn from the very beginning towards screen-based entertainment. Too much early screen gazing has been linked by research to ADHD, autism and language delay. Boys love all the movement and excitement they see on the screen, but for healthy development they need real-life movement, first-hand excitement and exploration with all their senses, so don't let screens become their default activity. Many parents think their sons have to get up to speed with information technology as early as possible, or they'll be left behind. But IT is now progressing at such an amazing rate that anything a little boy learns in his early years will be out of date by the time he's in his teens. From the point of view of his all-round development, the most important thing parents can do is keep it real. Quite apart from the potential effects of screen gazing on the brain, boys who become attached to TV, websites, computer gaming and so on are also exposed to media and marketing influences that can undermine parental authority. This can easily lead to problems with behaviour. There's now huge media-driven peer pressure on boys to behave in ways that aren't in their long-term interests, such as stuffing themselves with burgers, pizza and fizzy drinks. So limit your son's screen time. Keep electronic equipment out of his bedroom and make a point of never giving in to pester power. He doesn't need every computer game that comes out. He needs a life. Boys' slower rate of development means that many boys aren't ready for formal learning until they're 6 or 7 years old. They still need plenty of opportunities to run about outdoors and play. Real-life play is the natural, inborn human learning instinct. So if your son doesn't make as much progress as the girls in his class in the first few years of primary school, don't panic. Keep him active outside school. Lots of opportunities to explore the real world, make and build things, be creative, and read him lots of stories. The best way to ensure long-term success in literacy is to read to your son throughout his childhood. Boys are naturally competitive. They all want to be top dog, so early failure can be a real turn-off. So support him in what he's good at and try to keep his spirits up about anything he's finding tricky. Then if there are still problems at 7, talk to his teacher and work out the best way to help him catch up. Boys' competitive streak and their natural risk-taking instinct also shows in the way they play. Some parents, especially mums, worry about their sons' wild, rumbustious games and their interest in play fighting. But as long as it's play, it's fine. Children are generally pretty good at knowing their own limits, so aren't likely to damage themselves too much. And it's only by taking real risks in real time and real space with real people that a boy learns to manage risk for himself in the future. It helps for little boys to play fight with their dads, to learn how to do it without hurting anyone. And when he's out climbing trees and rushing about like a mad thing, remember the words of Lady Allen of Hertwood, one of the great British play experts. Better a broken bone than a broken spirit. As time goes on, many boys find their need for action and risk is fulfilled through competitive sport. It's a great way to channel his male instincts. If not, some other sort of disciplined social activity like debating or playing in an orchestra might do the trick. Or perhaps something like climbing, caving, cycling, camping or orienteering. The male of the species seems to flourish when he's regularly out in the great outdoors. Another result of this risk-taking instinct means that right from the start, boys need very firm boundaries for their behaviour, and they need the adults who care for them to be consistent about maintaining the boundaries. For instance, from toddlerhood onwards, they need to learn the ropes of civilised social living, like manners, personal hygiene, how to look after themselves and their stuff. So don't fall into the trap of indulging or overprotecting them. One 10-year-old boy I interviewed for my book told me he loved being a 21st century boy because I can sit in my room and watch TV and play my computer games, and if I get hungry, I text down to my mum and she brings me up a pizza. When I tell men that story, they tend to agree that it sounds pretty good, but that the lad's unlikely to develop the social skills and emotional resilience he needs for the future. And cool is likely to become ever more important to him than school as the years go by. Finally, boys need men in their lives. Nowadays, there are very few men in primary schools, and real-life role models outside school are thin on the ground. So dad's influence is incredibly important, and if dad isn't around, it's vital to find other men, granddad, other family members or friends, to act as male role models. Otherwise, boys will learn about male behaviour from the men they see on screen. And sadly, such role models are often violent, aggressive, and misogynist. Today's boys, even pre-teens, are watching a lot of porn, which is all too easily accessed on the internet and doesn't do anything to help them establish healthy relationships with girls when the time comes. Experts on male psychology also recommend that in the teenage years, when a boy is establishing his adult identity, he needs a male mentor. Not his dad, because there can sometimes be tensions there, but another responsible man who can act as a role model and be there to talk when the need arises. For an educational expert, I realise I haven't said much about education, but over the last 20 years, I've been involved in endless school initiatives about raising boys' achievement. They usually work for a while, but the problems don't go away. In fact, they seem to get worse. So I'm now convinced we should stop obsessing about raising boys' achievement and concentrate on raising boys. If we do that sensibly and responsibly, I reckon the achievement will follow.